me okay? All right, awesome. If at any time throughout the night you can't hear me, please thumbs up, and I will speak louder. I just want to first just say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to spend these 3 weeks with everyone. Even though it's been difficult, and I know that we've been just throwing a lot of information at you and really just introducing some really difficult topics for you to really sit and think about. It's very impactful and meaningful what you're doing for your families, and also just in the scheme of our work at Community Disruption and what it means that you're here, you know, kind of to what Natalie said, and human trafficking, prevention, and what all of that looks like. And so I am just really excited to start this, this third day. Just want to introduce our director, Joe. It's a little hard to miss him if you've already been here since 7. But Joe's our director. You'll be able to hear from him. He'll give a good chunk of the presentation. He just has a lot of information and knowledge about what we do, boots on the ground, in our approach in fighting the demand of trafficking in our city. And so I was like, you need to come talk to people are excited to see you, like rock star status. So I'm excited for you guys to meet him and talk to him tonight. Okay, so day 3, we are going to be doing what are your house rules and responsibilities. So we're getting just a little bit more technical. The first week was very informational. The second week, we were kind of in our feelings, talking about our story. This week is a little bit more technical. And so, just to kind of review, it's been a long week. So just to review, this is our timeline. The timeline of which we based this workshop off of, because there are these vulnerable ages that we pinpointed from the time span of 9 to 21 years old, where this issue can impact the youth and their families, and how it impacts also our work in fighting trafficking. And so at age 9, this is the average age of exposure to pornography. And we move into age 12, where this is the first smartphone. And you know, we've mentioned before technology, how it's impacted our youth, especially with COVID, and how it's having to be introduced even a bit younger. We talked about that in the past 2 weeks about, you know, awareness. What do we really need to know? What do we really need to look out for? Also at age 12, this is when US girls are first exploited. And so when we say exploited, we mean wanted touch, abuse, harassment, things of that nature. Going on to age 15, where we see 90% of males have seen pornography unintentionally or intentionally. And we recognize now too that this is no longer a male-specific issue. This is also something that's touching young girls, females, because 62% of females have seen pornography as well. And so now we move to age 18, where this is at age 18, it's normalized in our culture that, you know, 18 years old, you're off into college, you're an adult. You know, you go, you know, as a rite of passage to your first strip club visit. But also at the same time, this is the age for girls to enter into the porn industry. And this is not reflected by the work that we have done in collaboration with other organizations, because we worked at the state level to be able to raise this number now to 21. And of course, in the grand scheme of things, that might seem, you know, not quite significant, but still, you know, that difference between, you know, what we're able to do is something notable, especially just considering the age. And then on to 21, this is now we've cited that money is no longer the #1 issue for divorces. It's actually pornography usage. And so when we think about this timeline, and you know, in the vulnerabilities, in what we do specifically. We're not saying, again, that you start out at age 9, having exposure to pornography and hitting all of those ages and reaching to the end, at the point of arrest, listening. But we are saying that, if your family is fortunate enough not to have been on this timeline, there are people in your lives that are. And it's important that we're able to recognize the signs so we can disrupt this timeline from continuing wherever you are and wherever the people that you're wanting to help are. And so last week we covered the consequences of viewing pornography. We also always have to think too, are we a consumer or are we being consumed? Because this industry, it doesn't care about us, right? We talked about the brain science of it and how it has the same addictive nature as drugs. Someone even mentioned as cocaine in a research that they were able to read. And so these are the physical consequences. So we need to think about that not just for adults that might be struggling with an unwanted behavior, but kids specifically that might be going through this. So you have changes to your brain, you have loss of time and productivity, you have porn-induced erectile dysfunction, things that play a significant impact into their adulthood. You have psychological consequences, increased aggression and violence, shame and guilt. We'll talk a little bit later about how this manifests and what it might look like in your homes when someone in your family might be struggling. Depression, low self-esteem, low body image, social anxiety, social consequences, loss of trust with others, inability to be intimate, increased correlation to divorce. We saw that just now on the timeline. Loss of belief in marriage, and spiritual consequences. In a church setting, when you're struggling with something like this, it might come with it that aspect of shame and guilt, and not being able to reach out, not being able to feel like you can talk to somebody else about it. And so this leads to the testimony of Stephanie. She is an advocate in the anti-trafficking space, and she has a very powerful testimony about how this issue specifically has impacted her family. And she even mentions the fact that, she wishes that there were resources out there when she was struggling. And so, even though it's difficult, there's still a lot of hope in what she has to tell us. And so, I just also want to prepare you for this video because, as I mentioned before, it's really important to us, that this is a safe space. And so, at any time throughout this presentation, you might not feel in the right headspace, or you might feel uncomfortable at any time. Please do what you need to do to be able to, digest and take in this information as fast as you can. So whatever that looks like, stepping out, getting a drink of water, whatever that looks like, please feel free to do that. Okay, I'm going to show you the video. Hopefully the volume works. Okay, I knew that was going to happen. Sorry, technical difficulties.
About 8 years ago, when our son was 12 years old, we had caught him watching aggressive and violent pornography on our desktop computer. And we had no idea what to say. We didn't know where this was coming from. He did not have a cell phone. He did not have access to a laptop or an iPad. But other children around him did, in the neighborhood, on the school bus, at school, And this was his introduction to pornography. And when we sat down with him, we had no tools. We didn't have the slightest idea of what to say, what words to use, how to ask him questions. And so we embarrassed him, and we made him feel bad about what he did, because we didn't know what to say, and we didn't mean to do those things, but because we didn't even have a basic understanding of what was going on, we were so detached from the culture. We're a good family, right? We go to church, and our son's in youth group, and we never thought that we would ever have to have those types of conversations with our children. But it didn't stop him from watching pornography. It just made him watch it more secretively. And so fast forward 2 years after that initial conversation, our son made the choice to sexually assault a younger girl. And it was something that was very difficult for our family. And we had to go to court with him, and he got arrested, and he got charged with a felony count of sexual assault. And one thing that we learned out of all of it is, if we would have had those tools, if we would have known what to say, if we would have been better equipped with the right language and the right type of conversation to have with him, that maybe it could have prevented him from making that decision. Maybe we would have not been standing in a courtroom with our 14-year-old son being convicted. And the things that we know now, the conversations that we can have now with other parents about what happened, and tell them our testimony, and try to get parents to understand that it's okay to parent your children. It's okay to ask those questions. It's okay to not know what you're going to say, but also to seek out the information to have these great conversations with your children. Ultimately, at the end of the day, parents, we're the ones that are tasked with this duty to protect our children and to equip our children on how to be in this culture that they are currently living in. And really getting the information and getting educated is really key, because at the end of the day, parents, we're ultimately in charge of defending our home. Are you confident?
Like I said, I wish after showing that video that everyone could get a chance to meet Stephanie in person, because just what she exudes with her testimony is just very hopeful in the light of just something really dark and something that just doesn't seem hopeful, of course. And I think that's something that just really resonates with me about Stephanie's testimony, is you just see her as, you know, mom in that testimony, and you see her talking about her 12-year-old son to her 14-year-old son, and you know, we're always wanting to be able to just reveal a little bit more about the work that we do in showing that unfortunately those that fall victim, they are husbands, they are fathers, they are unfortunately sometimes 12 or 14-year-old boys. And that's the reason why it's so important that every single one of you is in here today, finishing up this 3-week series, to be able to have those conversations like Stephanie said, and also to be able to be aware, so that now from this workshop you can go forward in this awareness and learning more and finding out more information and figuring out what works for your family, and having tools like our organization and others to be able to do that. And so as we just continue with this presentation, I just want to, really want to focus in and hone into the reason why you're all here tonight, because this whole entire workshop has been about that very person in your family, that very person in your life. Maybe it's even multiple people, but you came in here because you wanted to protect them, you wanted to defend them, you wanted to be the person that speaks light and truth in the midst of everything that Stephanie mentioned and what we've been talking about these past 2 weeks, a very hypersexualized culture and a very just dark, shameful topic, and being able to bring back hope into it. And so keep those people in your thoughts today as we're talking about house rules and tech responsibilities, because as I mentioned before, what works in one house might not work with the next house. And so, excuse me, it is whatever that is the best solution for you specifically. And so I'm going to turn this over to Joe now, and he's going to walk us through our approach for this week. And so before Joe takes over the mic, I just want to point out to our worksheet, we're going to start on this side with the timeline. We'll start at the experiential avoidance model, and then we'll go and we'll finish out the back. And so at the end of the night, if you have any questions about the worksheet, please feel free to come up and talk to us about it. Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you so much, Paul. See my timer.
Yes.
I was threatened, literally threatened before I started. We have to stop at 8:30. That was not a subtle threat either, so I put my timer on. I will comply. Who here had the talk with your parents when you were a kid? You know what I'm talking about, the talk, right? The sex talk. Anybody raise your hand? One hand, right? Maybe 5 hands? Okay. Who as a parent has had the talk with their kid? How'd those go? Awesome?
Awkward.
Awkward? I got one nod on awesome.
It's okay.
It's okay? That's a pretty good range. And I'd say it's a pretty consistent range. Let me tell you about my talk I had, okay? So, my aunt and uncle, for some reason, decided to adopt 2 eating machines. I was 10, my brother was 12. And so they adopted us when we were kids. And here's this sweet lady. We're in the car. We're going to Sharpstown back when that wasn't a life-threatening decision. We're going there to the mall. We're going to see some friends. And like 5 minutes into this drive, she just blurts out, "You aren't having sex, are you?" By this time, I think I'm probably 14, my brother's 16. Like, what? No, what are you talking about? She's like, no, I know you weren't. So she's driving, 10 minutes goes by. But if you did, you'd wear a condom, right? What is even happening? I'm trying to open the door, trying to get out. And then the next 38 minutes of my life was the longest 38 minutes ever. Because we didn't say a word, and I could not wait to get out of the car. But now I look back and I think about how hard was it for this woman who raised 2 girls, didn't really have to have this talk, to bring that courage up to the surface and then try to start this conversation. It's hard, right? It is hard to do. And we started with the best intentions. It doesn't always go great. And so for you to be here tonight is extremely powerful. And for you to apply the things we're talking about, don't expect it to be perfect. Don't expect them to hit their knees and say, "I've been waiting for this conversation. We're the best parents." It's probably not going to happen. They will hear you. And that will matter. And when we talked about that timeline at the end, we have another thing that we do. We work with buyers, people who are arrested for solicitation of prostitution. We're there when they're arrested. We were last week when 25 men were arrested in Montgomery County. And last night I talked to a guy that was arrested about 8 months ago and has to take our class. And his exact words to me were, "Y'all have to talk to the schools about this stuff. I never knew anything about this." I would never have been there that night if I'd known. And he just started listing all the things he learned about the influence of pornography in his life, the influence of culture's design and what it is to be a man. And it was a powerful conversation, but my heart broke for him a little bit. So as we go through today, and we talk about what's next, we wrap up this series, I want you to know this is legacy-changing stuff that y'all are doing. Just saying yes to be here, okay? So take that with you. And if you're struggling or need anything after this workshop, follow up with us. We're happy to be here. Okay, so trust, realize, empathize, edify, there it is, and shame-free. We've talked about this as a sort of proactive approach, but we follow that up with haven. Think of safe haven, right? That's where home is. It's supposed to be a safe haven. Haven is home, having an action plan, validating, empathizing again. There's a reason why that makes both lists. That's how important it is. And then notify. So as we run through these today, we're going to break down a little bit of how to apply some of this, realizing that much of what we've talked about is preparation. But we get phone calls, sadly, on a weekly basis from parents who are like, I walked in, my kid had this on, turns out he's been struggling for 2 years, or he's being extorted by someone because he sent pictures, or she did. There's some very real things that we have to deal with that are happening. And so we're going to talk about some of those things right now. All right, so home. Home is where we feel safe and being ourselves. Now, home is also where we have a great deal of familiarity. And whenever you're dealing with your kids, I have 3 kids, they're adults now, 21, 22, 27, and this still happens. There are these moments where we realize, okay, there's a little bit of tension here, gotta get some space, gotta come at this a different way. And so as we talk about difficult subjects, we have to remember that. We have to remember that oftentimes the thing that we see, the acting out behavior, is not the problem. No, that's the result, right? That's the effect. This is a cause and effect job you have as parents. Amen? Cause and effect. Something's happening. I need to be the voice of reason here and help them through this, but I also need to get to the root of it. Acting out can be so many things. I mean, it could be pornography, it could be food, it could be fighting, it could be arguing, it could be a lot. But that's just the behavior. What's driving that? We'll get to that in a second. But what's important to understand about it is the reason human nature, the reason we do this is because we do not want to feel the thing we're actually feeling and having to deal with it, right? When it's hard, we want to avoid that. That's why this is called the experiential avoidance model. So we see that behavior on the left side, that acting out, temporarily relieve the thing we're struggling with, but it's just temporary. And then we feel the guilt and shame again. Now put yourself in a teenager or a kid's position. They're ashamed of something, or they're struggling. They're one of these things. I mean, does this describe a teenager? It describes a lot of adults, but we've all felt some anxiety, rejection, shame, loneliness. I mean, all that happens before first period. It's hard being a kid. And in this culture now, we always say, oh, you got it so easy. Okay, Google, write my term paper. When I was a kid, and then 45 minutes later, you finish your little soliloquy. The fact is, this is one of the hardest times in history to be a kid. And all of these things they struggle with are very often because of our smartphones and the always-on world that they live in, and the always-on judgment that comes with that. But if it's one of the hardest times in history to be a kid, it's one of the hardest times in history to be a parent. And we have to realize we're not dealing with the acting out, we're dealing with this internal struggle. Okay, what's really happening? I know it's not like you to whatever acting out behavior is, but the problem is if we don't address it, it just becomes a loop. And on some level, if we're really honest with ourselves, we actually all do this. All of us. Catch me around tax time. Bro, it's a 7, 8, 9 attempt effort to do my taxes. And mixed in there is probably a run to get brisket to make myself feel good, or eat something because that's just my out. But it is absolutely true. We think about experiential avoidance, we realize that we all do this to some degree. But there's a way to break this cycle, and it is crucial. 3 things. I want you to say them with me. I really want this interaction, okay? Those 3 things, your beliefs, your attitudes, and your values. Let me hear it. Beliefs, attitudes, and values. Why is that so important? Because that's the truth. That's who you're talking to, your kid. That's what we have to get to. Not the acting out behavior. That's not your kid. That's not your spouse. That's not your brother. That's not whoever it is you see that's hurting. We have to get to their beliefs and values and attitudes. Because then it goes from an acting out behavior straight to dealing with that internal struggle. And that is a powerful thing to get through. I mean, in fact, it doesn't have to be some serious acting out behavior. It can be simple like sarcasm or having attitude or not treating their sibling right. There are ways to get down to, I've seen you with your sister, and I know that you are a leader and you care about her. But lately you haven't been very kind. Is something else going on? That's busting through all this other garbage, right? That's getting down to who they are and speaking identity language. And when we do that, we have an opportunity for them to hear the way we see them. That's important. All right, so the action plan. It's a little bit of an eye chart. If you can't read it, I'm allergic to reading slides because it's just like death by PowerPoint. But I will this time because I know it's a big room. All right, so when we talk about house rules, we're talking about when and where. That's a good place to start. Now, if you want to implement any of the house rules you see here, you're like, that's a great idea. You better keep on nodding when you say, and I'm going to do it. 2, And if you can't say that, then good luck making it stick, right? So, times during the day where there's no technology. You know, we used to do at dinner time, my kids, their friends would come over, like, hey, what are you doing? I come on, sit down. We're all at the table. And then something without fail. A few days later, like, yeah, she asked the question. And we knew what the question was. Like, y'all do this every night? Y'all do the table every night? That's strange, right? Like, it was a rare thing. And they also saw that we don't have phones at the dinner table. We actually had a bowl. We put our phones in a bowl. We put the bowl in that room over there. And if your phone goes off, and you want to leave what's going on here for what might be on that phone, and you make a choice, go ahead. You're welcome to stand up and walk over there and pick your phone up and be flipping through if you want to. We did that because we wanted a separation. And that is okay, it's healthy, right? We need that separation. And so there are times with no technology, you can decide on what those are. Do you have physical locations for rules for accessing online content? So this can be age appropriate too. For younger kids, maybe the laptop they get to use is on the kitchen island, or it's in the living room, but it's not in their room. Privacy is good, secrecy not good. You're entitled to some privacy. You're not entitled to secrecy. That's something that we have to have a conversation with our kids about, because the two get very, very confused. But as a parent, say, yeah, you can use a laptop. You can use my laptop. But it's got to be out here. Oh, you don't trust me. No, it's not that. It's not that at all. I trust you. I don't trust all of that coming in. You can't block all that, neither can I. I love you. We got blockers on here. But sometimes we just can't unsee the things that we see. And I don't want that for you. So we'll go ahead and use it in the kitchen table. And then you use yours in the kitchen table. You know, do some compliance along with that. Of course, you're the parent. You can decide some of that. The other thing I would say is, well, for safety reasons, do not let them sleep with their smartphone in their bed, plugged in. That's a bad idea. But the other thing is bathrooms, right? I mean, it doesn't take 45 minutes to go to the restroom. The truth of the matter is, we take our phones in, we lose track of time, and things don't work, we can't know, whatever. So, yeah, see, there's some truth to that matter. When we model this, we're able to say, look, house rules. And even at night, I've had people want to talk to them and show them how to set up this. You can buy these stands in the hallway and just charge all your phones at night there. You don't need your phone for alarm clock. That's the biggest argument. Like, nope, I'll buy you an alarm clock. Right, here's two. You know, we start separating some things in terms of need when we talk about devices. All right, so age rule. What age do children in your family need to be before they get their first internet-connected device? These are just open conversations, things that we can discuss, and then content rules. Social media, websites. Here's the thing I tell my kids. I love you, and I trust you, but I will verify it all the time. And at any time, I'll come to you, and I'll say, hey, give me your phone. And the only answer I want is feedback. That's it. Now, as they got older, we did that less often. Probably less often than we should have, if I'm being very honest. But I said, listen, your mom and I love you. And there are over 200 billion porn sites and pages, and there's two of us. So we're going to have some accountability because we care about you. There are over 300,000 political websites alone. There are all, so I went down the line of all the things that they can get tied up in. I said, we will have passwords on your phone. If you have a password on your phone, we will know it. And if you're on social media, we're going to be your friend. That's just the way it is. I understand. If it makes you wonder a little bit about our trust, it's not about trust. It's about loving you and making sure that we're in this together, because we are in this together. So, if you can bring that message back to we're in this together, I get tempted too. I was looking at it on sports radio. I was on sports radio, and I was scrolling through Cy Young leading candidates. Because I think Verlander's going to win it, and I believe he should. So I'm scrolling through, and this ad pops up. And it's a woman who apparently is in a grocery store. Some of y'all probably seen these because it's very common. If it's a sports site, it's very likely it's just something like this going to come up. And the picture's cut off just right here, and it says pictures to whatever to be for us to show. Click here. I was trying to look at baseball, right? I'm trying to look at who's going to win the Cy Young. And there's that little bait right there. So when we talk about being mindful and being in this together, sometimes we can acknowledge that, look, it happens to me too. I see it all the time. I want us to be on the same team. All right, so check outside the home, expectations. You can't be everywhere. It's not about getting the perfect app to block every bad thing on their phone, because guess what, there are other phones. So it's not about that. We're not building a bigger wall, because there is no wall high enough to block all the bad stuff. No, we're building a stronger child. We're not raising children, we're raising adults. And someday you're not going to have me here, and you're not going to have to answer to me. You may not have to answer to anybody. You might live alone. And we're building habits now so when they do, they're not as easily tempted and distracted. So, you know what's interesting is you go to Starbucks or a hotel or whatever, and you want to use their Wi-Fi, what do you have to check? Permissions, right? Right? They'll give you the law, yeah, here, but you have to agree to these terms. How come we don't have terms in our own homes? Well, a lot of us don't. We've developed contracts. There are standard tech contracts out there. When you develop a tech contract and do that with your child, you do that kind of shoulder to shoulder instead of me telling you, here are the terms of your phone. Just sitting down and saying, I think 9:30 for anything that's not homework is reasonable. And if it's being used after 9:30, I'll get a notification. Does that sound fair to you? You can start having this conversation. Ultimately, you're the parent. You are going to dictate the terms. But come shoulder to shoulder, because the other thing you need to agree on are consequences. There should be consequences whenever you violate X, or this happens, or that happens. Just because we have to have an agreement. Because that's how life works. And so as we do that together, we're able to go through this together. And again, that theme keeps coming back. Doing it shoulder to shoulder. So when we share this responsibility, there's something we like to say. It's called lead with the why. I've even seen, I think I saw an entire TED Talk on the why. It's a little bit different in this case, but not a lot. We want to think about the why. We always tell the what as parents, and we're going to get to that in a second. But when we lead with the why, what they hear is the love language. They hear the concern, the specific motivation, instead of, you're going to do this. So we'll talk about that in a second. Share the responsibility by developing the contract together. Do as I do, not do as I say. That's always a hard one, but collaborate on the consequences of not honoring the agreement, and then collaborate on the rewards. Accountability, we always think of it being some sort of punitive thing. You ever seen Monsters, Inc.? Yeah, a lot of truth in that show. I'm not kidding, man. They got this much out of the screen, but this much out of the laughter. It's kind of the same with accountability. If somebody's gone 7 days and hasn't taken the phone in the bathroom, your kid, just come home with a favorite bowl of drink they like. You're like, I'm noticing something about you. You are honoring this that I'm not having to ask you about. I really appreciate that respect, but more than that, I appreciate the respect you have for yourself, honoring this agreement. They're not expecting that, right? They're expecting a hammer every time they do wrong. Well, they should get a hug every time they do right. If there's something you can bring to that change, it really changes the expectations in your interaction. All right, validate. What are we talking about here? This is the why line. So I talked about it a second ago. As parents, we feel like there's different stages depending on how old your kid is. When they're young, you're the caregiver, you do everything for them. Second, they get a little older, they're toddling around, they kind of get their own sippy cup or whatever, but you're still the commander, you're the benevolent dictator. You're going to run the show, but you're doing it in a way that's in their best interest. And then the why line. But why? But why did you say so? Because I want you to do this. But why do you want me to do that? And on and on and on. They're going to ask why. What we are talking about here is get into that early habit, or even now, if they're teenagers, doesn't matter how old they are, of talking about the why. The why is the heart behind the what. So who has young kids, like 6, 5, 4? Okay, so y'all probably won't sticker when they go, why? Because you do hear that. And they always want to know. They feel like they deserve an explanation. Well, when we're talking about things that are important, the why is crucial. It is your best approach, I believe. Because then you become a coach. They're a little bit older. Okay, I'm moving away from total direction to self-direction. Now they're 16, 17. I'm a counselor. I'm helping them make the right choices. And then finally, my kids' age, 20s, I'm a consultant. I'm supposed to be invited in. Most of the time I wait for the invitation. Sometimes I just loiter and stalk until the invitation comes. But most of the time, I wait for the invitation. But in any case, I try to remember to lead with the why. we really want to be heard, lead with the why. I'll model this for you. So let's read it from the bottom up. What? Say what you're going to do. We'll have more direct conversations. That's the what we're going to do. It's kind of like, yo, clean your room. That's the what. Or whatever that directive is. The how is, so the what was, we're going to have more direct conversations. The how is, this is a shared responsibility. And so I think maybe we'll go get iced coffee or something and talk a little bit about some of these things. That's the how. But the why is what we lead the discussion with. We come to them and say, you know, I was at a training today and we were sitting in, you guys are outside having fun, and I just kept thinking about you. And thinking about the person that you're at, who you are, all of these wonderful things about you in this world that you're growing up in, that honestly isn't always as wonderful as you are. There are a lot of temptations and challenges, and I know that you're not going to be perfect, but I want you to know we're doing this together. I want to do this with you. I see you being a leader for others, your brother and sister. That's a great thing to tell if you have older siblings, by the way. I see you doing the best you can, and I want to be there for you. And because of that, I'd like to grab iced coffee with you. Now we're going down, we're going to the how. Like once a week, just see how you're doing. Give some of that best and worst. What's the best thing in your life right now? What's the worst? What's your relationship with your boyfriend like? And then the what? And then when we have those conversations, I want you to know that I love you and we're in this together, we'll work together, and we'll come up with a plan together on what to do about it. Does that sound okay? So it really is leading with that why. We want them to hear why, who they are. That's that identity language that you probably heard in the first couple of weeks. And we bring it back to that, and it really matters. And I'll tell you, this works with spouses too. So if you're here by yourself, your spouse is not here, it's just between us. Try it. Just 4 points. The why is, so, here, I'll take an exit here. I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Anybody bringing other stuff in here with you today, like crap in life that's not easy? A lot of stuff going on. I see a lot of head nods. It's true. So, here's my world right now. One of my kids is sick, is getting better. Another one, she spent 2 weeks after having surgery in her jaw, and it was just killing her. She's getting a little better. My wife got some major surgery. My mom's in the hospital. I had a crown pop off the other day, right before training. I threw my back out, so I'm in a lot of pain right now. I stubbed my toe because I threw my back out about an hour before I got here. And I got this jacked up haircut I've been trying to fix all day. And I got this haircut today. And she did my eyebrow. Man, don't do my eyebrows. You could ask for permission. That's a violation, right? She's grabbing me out, and I'm like, I love it. What happened? And I've got more hair on my face than is on the floor. That's just being old. So, all of that stuff, I left in my truck. Amen. Because tonight, this fires me up. Just being in here after 2 weeks of y'all being with phone, I'm getting chilled right now thinking about it. This is legacy changing stuff. And so when I think about that, and I think about this why language, then I'm reminded of things that are important. And so when I was talking about speaking to your spouse, my wife is a nurse. And last week, my mom wasn't in the hospital. She was at home. And apparently her oxygen levels were in the 80s when she was sleeping. I'm a layman, I know it's not great, but I didn't know how severe that was. They had her go to the emergency room on Friday. They admitted her immediately. She's still there, and she was probably within 10 to 12 hours of her body probably stopped working. That's how dire that is. And so what I told my wife was, you know, just having her in the hospital is a blessing, because she wouldn't have been there if I hadn't had somebody like you that has such a heart for her in our life. And you are such an important part of my life, even whenever I'm not asking for help. And I think it made a difference in my mom's health. I know it made a difference in her health, and it might have made a difference in her life. So that's why language. Like, that's why I'm so appreciative. Not what she did. Hey, thanks for telling her to go to the doctor. That's great, of course. But let's use why language more often, even in small conversations, and then leave room for God to come on in and really reach in to that relationship and enrich it. It's amazing what can happen, because your kid is expecting you to do the whole I walked up the hill both ways when I was your age, all of that stuff, because that doesn't make any sense, but that's what we tell them. But they're not expecting to hear, man, I don't know what I would have done with one of these smartphones at 15. I would have destroyed myself. You've got so many challenges. You're doing so well. I just want to continue that and improve on it. That is why language, right? Okay. I spent more time than I should have on that, but it really hits me when I see that. All right, empathize. This video, this video is by Brene Brown, who no one needs to introduce who Brene Brown is. And it's really powerful. Listen to some of the words she uses. And if you're missing opportunities to do this, take it with you today, right? And if you're doing it, keep it up. Probably should hit enter.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different from sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, woo, it's bad, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I have it, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Has anybody seen that before?
Yes.
I might do it 150 times. I see it every time it goes. Somebody give them a little.
I wish I could hear it again. I saw it last week.
What's that? You saw
I
it?
wish I could hear it again.
It just home.
Maybe it's right the hardest phrase for sure.
So what is it? Android. All right, thank you very much. Tech support. Wait, yep, yeah, that works. There we go. It's working. Yeah, I love a lot about that. But one of the things at the end that is so powerful as a parent, if you didn't hear that, or if you didn't write anything like this down in your empathy model story, what did you say at the end? I don't really even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you trusted me with that. Man, that's powerful. I mentored 3 boys. They're not my boys, but I try to treat them like that for the time we're together each week that I mentor them. And the things they tell me are just sometimes very, very heartbreaking. And it's okay not to have the answer. In fact, they'll trust you more if you don't have the answer and you own up to it and say, I don't even know what to say about that, but I want you to know you're not in this by yourself. Or I don't know the answer to that, but let's find it out together. How about that? That's that empathy where we bring it together. So as we look at this story model, y'all remember doing this? Did anybody put it into practice at home yet? Did y'all try it? I encourage you to try it. I encourage you to try it, do a dry run with your partner. But if you're focused on the elements of the story model, it gets easier. And here's what I mean. Look at what we say here in these empathy parts. Just kind of like what we just talked about with Brene Brown. Because I know this is hard, but I'm just glad you trusted me with it. And while it's not exactly the same, I know what it's like to struggle with shame. So we'll use shame as the example here, okay? Somebody just told you something that they are ashamed of. Your kid, your friend, whoever. Taking that empathetic approach sounds very different than what everybody else is saying. Because their friends are going to say, oh, that's no problem, no big deal, you'll get over it, you're a strong person, all of that. We're getting on their level and going shoulder to shoulder, we're digging down in that hole with them. And then the vulnerability comes in when we come alongside. Look, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I have battled with shame myself. In fact, I used to use eating to cope. So there is it doesn't have to be the same thing. You're not having a competition of who's the most incredible train wreck. You're coming alongside and saying that, you know what? I feel you. I know some of this is hard. And I've been there myself. And that vulnerability allows you, especially when you're talking to your kid, this can be very powerful. My vulnerability, dig into when you're their age. Or even now. There are things that I'm self-conscious about that I shouldn't be. And they make me act out a certain way. In this case, I eat to overcompensate. But while maybe feeling less in control, the escape was very brief. Then it added more shame. But with help over time, I've gotten so much better at dealing with the source of the shame. And I have faith that by us working together, you can too. The motivation is so powerful because you're still telling your story here. You're not standing up to them and explaining to them what's wrong with them and how you can fix it. Here's your problem. You know what your problem is? It's that boyfriend is. It's not that, even though that's usually the problem. Yes, it's your daughter, it's the boyfriend. As you go through this, it becomes that empathy and vulnerability is still your story, but we're bringing it back to them. And we're also providing hope. You see the hope language here? That can be very, very powerful. If you haven't tried it, try it. It's there and it works. Okay, so lead with empathy-based conversations. This is back to that identity language. Y'all, identity is the word that the Lord keeps putting on my heart. He has been doing it now for a year, along with a couple of other words that he is giving me, and I keep hearing identity. And that's what it keeps coming back to, whether I'm working with a 13-year-old girl, or I'm working with a 45-year-old man who's been arrested for solicitation. Identity, who are you? Going back to the beliefs, values, and attitudes, getting down to who you are. And so when we're talking to our kids, I'll put one of my kids' names in there, Joseph. By the time you're 21 years old, I really hope that you will. And I'm not going to now tell them I hope how they're going to be a totally different person. I mean, it's my kid. I've been with him for how long? 17 years? What are those attributes? It's my hope that you will continue to grow in the compassion you have for others. Continue to exemplify the courage that you show when others don't say anything, you always speak up. Every time you do that, it makes me proud. You're giving them that identity. No, you're recognizing their identity, and you're reaffirming it in a way that is crucial. And quite honestly, in a way that's biblical. I mean, if we relied on our definition of our identity, would we have ever been saved? Did any of us deserve it? No. You can't earn it, right? It's grace, it's a gift. When we talk about identity, let's get down to that core, the things they're not going to hear when we leave those doors, unless it's somebody that sincerely cares about them. When you combine these two with this type of connection, you do it a few times, they're going to hear how absolutely genuine that is and the love that you have for them. All right. Notify. I mentioned earlier, we don't always get to be proactive and be prepared. And honestly, we don't always get to be there when a threat arises. I mean, I know the only people that would be between that threat and my child, if I saw it, would be, the only person beating me there was my wife, like the mama bear. And they probably want to tangle with me instead of her. But that is not the chance we get in the world we're in now. Right? And the truth of the matter is, we're all sort of struggling with some things, and we don't always have our head up and see changes in behavior. We don't see where our kids are trying to work through something, or maybe are even being exploited or having a difficult time. But when we see that, and we need to take action, it's not easy to know what to do. So this is just a general one that we put together. It actually was something that we helped a parent with their child who was being extorted. So heavy talk stuff, okay? But I want you to hear it because it's happening. It's happening with regularity. It's happening in our churches, schools, all of that. 15-year-old boy gets a text message. And the text message says, "I'm a girl at your school. You're so cute. I just can't come up to you," or whatever. And they start a chat, right? What boy wouldn't like that? Now flip it. What girl wouldn't like that if it's that type of approach? So there's this affection, this attention. It's a soft sell. It's gaining that confidence. And then it turns sexual. I would never do this, but here's a picture. I'm so embarrassed, whatever. And it's these pictures of a nude girl, right? The implication is that it's her, and she feels like this is what she wants to show. And so now this is really going to the next level. And 15-year-old boy got the hormones raging, he's like, oh. And the response is, her response was, if you send me something, I'll send you something else. They're trying to draw from them a nude picture. And I know we're all thinking my kid would never do that. The truth of the matter is, that's a very difficult time to make a decision, even if you're a good person. And so we see kids that answer with their own picture, and then all of a sudden the response is, look, I need $300 by the end of the month, or this is going on your Instagram. I'm going to send this to your parents. I know your parents are on Facebook. All of this, it turns into what's called sextortion. It is happening with such frequency. And you know what? In most cases, it's not even a girl at their school. It's some 35-year-old guy who's doing it to 10 other people. And he's just doing it in a way that he's creating revenue. So this is a terrible place to be. And so when your kid has these, hey, we need $300 for a class trip. Really? That's a lot for a class trip. Like, that was exactly the case for this one. They'd gotten about 3 payments in, not realizing they were giving their son who was in golf and other extracurricular activities. Finally, the mom heard the phone go off because the kid forgot it at school, and went off like at 6 a.m. and it was that person extorting them, and she just hit over her head immediately. So I tell you all of that as a cautionary tale, and also that there is a game plan. There is a way to go through this. And so when we created this for this particular situation, I have had to use this now probably 7 times this year. And that's a lot. That's a lot for people to find us and call us. Sadly, I did it today. This girl's an adult, but she's a high-functioning, autistic woman, 20 years old, and I was reached out to by another org asking for help. And so we gave her this game plan because she was experiencing a lot of the same things. So this is Notify. There are scenarios that change, that are different, that are embarrassing, that are hard. You are not in this by yourself. If this happens, you can reach out to us. We're with you, we'll walk through it with you, but here's the test. How do you still lead with empathy if your kid does something like this? You know how? They're still your kid. Their identity didn't change. Their actions did. And they're dumb for doing it and all of that. Now, you want to go and compare checklists when you were 13, 14, 15 years old? Without this technology always on, I mean, it's tough for them. They make bad decisions, and now it's fueled and it's public immediately. We never had to worry about that. The world is changing in such a way where we have to change how we approach some of the most difficult conversations. Okay? So, game plans, we got it. All right, so as I wrap up my section, and that clock is ticking, and I can feel Fung looking at me the entire time, we'll turn it back over to her. I have 1 minute and 12 seconds left. Aren't you proud of me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank y'all so much. I really mean it when I say it fires me up to be here tonight, because I would much rather be talking to y'all than talking to your kids in 15 years because nobody was interceding when they needed it. These guys that we talked to, the guy I talked to last night, he's broken. Like, he is just, yes, it's shame, but more than that, it's like, I don't even recognize who I am. This is not me. And that's his first step to turning this around. But it's going to take some work. And for him to say, y'all need to reach the kids, y'all need to get to the parents, y'all are the parents that are here tonight. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, everyone, again, and thank you so much, Joe. Didn't I hype him up well, right? Come on. So just to kind of wrap up our 3 weeks, I can't believe it. To wrap up our 3 weeks together, I just want to walk through this last and final section of the worksheet. And this is just giving a little bit more like a technical terminology of what we are basically teaching you guys to do these past 3 weeks. And so sometimes it's just easier to be able to understand really, what it is that we're doing. We have this terminology. And so what really is your role? Like, yes, you're the parent, but also your role in this, it's self-awareness. You're guiding those that you're working with, the children in your family, the youth in your family that you're talking through this with about. You're helping them to realize what emotions that they're feeling, because there are so many emotions that a teenager or even a child is feeling at times, and they don't know what all those feelings are. So sometimes jealousy might look very angry, and sometimes anger might look very sad. And so we have to be able to help them to understand, like if their sister took their notebook, it's not that like they hate you or anything like that, or they want to do bad things to you, although it might feel like it at the time, right? It's just that, she just wanted to look at your notebook, right? How many of these conversations did you have today with your kids, right? Going into that is self-management. So after they realize what emotions they're feeling, now you're helping them to manage those feelings. So when I feel angry, or when I feel upset that my sibling took whatever it is that was mine, do I go and hit them? No, I have to go and talk to them about it. I have to tell them like, hey, when you took, X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, that made me feel really upset because this is my favorite notebook or my favorite pencil or my favorite stuffed animal. And, it's really important to me. And when you took it, that really upset me. So coaching them through that, self-management. And then the last part is responsible decision-making. So at the end of the day, when they know what emotions that they're feeling, we've given them, the tools or the plan or, a course of action for them to take whenever they're struggling through a different emotion. Now they can have a responsible decision. So, when I'm angry, am I going to go storm into my room? Or, when I'm angry at mom and dad, am I going to yell back? No, we're going to try to talk about this. Or, we're going to go for a walk. Or, like, what Joe mentioned, we're going to go for iced coffee. A lot of coffee cups in here today. So that's an idea for you guys tonight. And so in all the tools that we've taught you these past 3 weeks, this is kind of where they fall. So self-awareness, it looks like trees and even, walking through those steps with your kids. Trusting, realizing the situation. Empathy. Empathy is so important, right? That's the reason why we put it in both. We put it in trees and in Haven. The empathy story model, being able to be vulnerable with them, helping them and connecting with them and the emotions that they're feeling. Self-management. This is leading with the why. This is why we do the things that we do. And then guilt versus shame. We talked a little bit about this last week, where guilt is, what happens when you're feeling after something happens, but shame is lies. Shame is telling them things that aren't true about themselves. And then responsible decision making. We've walked through, tech responsibilities, house rules, things that you should consider in your plan And, big reminder, right? Like, if we are telling our kids to do it, then we also have to do it. And everyone in the house, no one is exempt, right? Just the basic nature of contracts. And so this is the last part of your worksheet. Hopefully I've guided you well these past 3 weeks. If not, I apologize. But you should have all of the parts of the worksheet filled out. No worries though if you didn't or if you missed anything. I'm going to give you guys something at the end that has all of this information from the past 3 weeks compiled together that you can access readily at any time. And so before we just kind of wrap up for the night, we started all of our workshop sessions with the reason why you're here and who's it for specifically. So you came here for that person. But you also have a reason for yourself, as to why you're here, why you're wanting to do this. And so, as you leave today and you have this, you have the resources that I'm going to give you, QR codes, all of that, my card information, right? You always have to circle back to that. Circle back to what is your reason for being here tonight, and what do you want to do? How is this material impacted you in the way you think about these things? And then how are you going to make an impact to everyone else around you that knows you? And so we just wanted to make sure that we ended the 3 weeks on a light, fun note. And so please enjoy.
This is called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what. The key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at school. I was like, all right, I can teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you a clip. Check it. So you're a musical director? Yes, sir. All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Wow. That brought us in, you know what I'm saying? Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick. You know, just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
Really, it's just a clap for yourself because I think there's something so incredibly just beautiful about the fact that, I don't know, like 1,000 kids or something were out there today, and they were being ministered to, they were being given life into, and some of those kids out there have parents sitting in this very room, and the parents that couldn't be in here are actually out there serving those kids. And so, just our Acting on Disruption, we love to talk about the legacy-changing impact of what we do, but also what you are doing by sitting here, by taking in the information, by going forth and changing the legacy of what of your kids, of what is out there for your community, for the neighbor next to you, all of it. And so, when we talk about this video, I just hope that you glean from that, you take from that why is just so very, very important. And so, thank you so much for the opportunity to just be here with you guys for the past few weeks and just walking through this together. So just to totally take away from the momentum of all this, I'm going to give you guys a lot of instructions because I know you guys really want all of this material. And so right now, I want you guys to take out your phone. Let's see if I still have those teacher skills. Take out your phone and scan this. Okay. So when you scan this, it will take you to a post-follow-up survey of our workshop. Please be as descriptive, as critical, but also as praiseworthy as you'd like. All of this information just really helps us to improve our workshop for future workshops here, hopefully, but also for workshops that we'll hopefully be able to do in churches all across the city of Houston. And so when you fill out the survey, it will give you a password. And so once you have that password, I'm going to move to the next slide where you can use that password to access all of the information that you guys might want for use in the future. So kind of give me a look or a thumbs up if we're ready. Also, while we're doing this, if you're able to multitask and you have any questions or comments or anything of that nature, I'd love to also take them right now too, if we can try to multitask. If not, that's fine too. What was the question? If you have any questions, we'd screen them right now. Yes?
So I guess my question would be the transition. I mean, I think this works good for 12, 13, 14, 15, but how does it go to kids that are 17, 18 when they feel that, oh, I'm grown and this is not, how can you, establish those contracts and rules and stuff like that? How does that work out?
Yeah.
No, do you want to take that question? Yeah. I'm gonna ask the guy that has the kids that are 20, 21, and 25.
I was listening very closely because I think this is probably a question you get at every workshop. So thank you for that. The question was regarding here, what do we do if you're 17, 18 years old? The whole horses looking forward kind of thing. I can tell you what my kids' experiences were with my oldest. I struggled with porn for like 7 or 8 years. I didn't know I was struggling most of the time. I'm just a guy, right? Why wouldn't I watch this? And then I realized it was changing me. It was changing me. And it was changing me with my relationship with my wife. And when I realized that, and I got free from that, it also freed me from the shame of it. So this is not easy. It's not easy to do. But if it's something that you overcome, so I'll give you a few examples of how to do it. If it's something that you overcome, I assume everyone in here is Christian because you go to this church. If not, it's okay too. But you have a testimony of some sort. What is your testimony? How many times have you shared your faith testimony? Often, or at least once, so you know what it is at least. This is kind of the same idea. Talking to so my oldest, who's 27 now, didn't get the same dad. I was still a good dad. I still taught him how to take care of things, how to be a good man, how to take care of, if you have a relationship, how to be a good guy, all of the things that a dad does. But the door I didn't open was that pornography door. We didn't talk about that. Can't let that alone, right? I wasn't going to open that door. Had a lot of guilt and shame around it. Wasn't going to bring it up. Fast forward to his younger brother, who's 6 years younger, and at one time had to say, can we just not talk about porn at the dinner table? That's how common the conversation was happening. Like, hey, because when you fight trafficking and you're over this and you're not in that shame, it becomes part of your common conversation. And I hadn't realized how common that was. And so my son's like, can we just take a break for dinner? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we take a break. So he had a very different conversation with his dad than his older brother did. So that vulnerability, that empathy, vulnerability, and the motivation, man, I'm telling you, those 1, 2, 3s, look, I don't know if you're going through this, but I see this throughout. And we just went through a training, and these guys were telling us about some things that got me a little scared. I know you're 17, 18 years old, but I just want you to know that this is something that's important to me. You're the most important person in the world to me. I don't want you to go through something like this alone. I know this culture throws a lot at you. So that's sort of a general approach. Another way you can do it is sort of like the mea culpa. Man, I just learned a lot in this 3-week club thing we're doing at Grace, and I was just sort of taking inventory of the missed opportunities that I had. I just didn't know. I didn't know what I was supposed to talk to you about. And some of this stuff scares me, but I love you too much. And I don't want you being isolated and in shame when the devil can do all his work for something that you don't need to carry by yourself. So I want you to know I'm here and I love you. And whether it's pornography, an unhealthy relationship, self-image, whatever that is, this is something that if I can turn back the clock, I would, but I can't, so we start. And it's a bold approach. But I got a feeling if you're here today, you've lived a pretty consistent fatherhood or motherhood pattern with your kids. So you were in the right. So those are a couple ways I would approach it.